is often very wrongly mistaken as the Panasonic 3DO specifically, but it's an interesting story. I think it's a very interesting story. You know how people joke about EA? EA are so rich they could make their own console. Uh, the 3DO is kind of almost like that in a weird way. There was a guy who was pretty high up in EA, like chief executive, I think. Obviously made a lot of money as EA kind of always have as well. It's not really a modern thing, but this EA executive thought, well, I like money. I have a lot of money, but you know what would be good? You know what would be good? More money. So he left EA and he founded the 3DO company. And the goal of the 3DO was kind of to make publishing games as profitable as possible. And it was kind of an experiment. It was kind of a weird business experiment because it's the sort of thing you cannot do now. You could have only done in that wild west of the industry that was the early 90s, you know? So what the 3DO company did is they designed the hardware, and they'd then get other companies to make that hardware for them. Panasonic being the main one, being the biggest one, who made like the launch model and everything. But there was Gold Star as well. I don't know what Gold Star do besides the 3DO. Do they make like microwaves and TVs, I think? There's also Sanyo, I think, who also do TVs. There's a lot of TV companies. Excuse me. Very, very reminiscent of like first generation Pong consoles. Oh, every TV company in the world, no matter how small you were, you had a Pong console. It was great. So yeah, that's why the 3DO was so expensive, just right out the bat. The hardware wasn't made by the 3DO company. They just gave the schematics and the licenses to bigger tech companies who would then go on to actually make the console. And they'd have nothing to do with the publishing of games or anything really beyond that, besides making controllers or other accessories for their models. So that's why the 3DO was so expensive. It had to be sold at a profit, because it couldn't do the thing every other console does, where you sell at a loss, make it back with games, because Panasonic wasn't selling the games, it was the 3DO company. Panasonic just made the hardware, Gold Star, etc. So that's why it was so expensive, because the hardware had to be sold at a profit. But that meant that the 3DO company, the actual people who designed the console, focused purely on making and mostly publishing games. Because it was so centralized, it was so easy to publish a game on 3DO, and very cheap as well. I think it was less than half the price of licensing and production costs per game compared to like Nintendo or Sega. So if you were a publisher, the 3DO was a beautiful thing. And what I also love about the 3DO is that if you were a game developer, because remember that developers still have costs in publishing, if you were a game developer, it was a dream. You know, some people, some indie studios, individuals, smaller teams, if it wasn't for 3DO, they probably wouldn't have gotten their start. You know, a lot of big names kind of started on 3DO. The first Need for Speed is huge. That's a huge series, bro. Need for Speed's fucking everywhere. And if not for 3DO, you wouldn't have Need for Speed. There's probably other examples. The one I always think of, just because I'm a big Warp fan, Warp got their start in 3DO, and they're not like a big name in gaming, but they're very special to me. So I'm grateful for the 3DO for giving them their start. They're a very interesting dev team. And no, naturally, with his connections, EA actually published quite a lot for the 3DO. Need for Speed, mainly. A lot of other random things, though. EA kind of had a weird renaissance period on the 3DO. They developed quite a few other exclusives for it, which are very cool. Now, the 3DO company themselves made games, I believe. Anything that has 3DO in the name, like Studio 3DO or Club 3DO, they develop their own games in-house as well. So publisher and developer kind of thing, because you might as well do both when you have your own game publishing company that's also like the head of a hardware concept licensing kind of thing. It was just the price point. The price point is why the 3DO fucks. Like, there's a reason consoles are sold at a loss. You kind of have to, else no one really wants to buy your machine. It's going to be too expensive. At that point, you're paying for like a high-end PC, and if you're paying that much money, then you'd probably just be buying a high-end PC kind of thing, Look at them geese. There's geese going by. I don't know if you can see them. We get a lot of geese around here. Tons of them last night. Look at them go. Look at those guys. Yeah, I come here because no one else goes this far up this beach. I'm sure it's scenic and it's beautiful and you get to be in nature. But I get to talk really loudly about the 3DO without embarrassing myself in front of everyone. And that's why I come here personally. Yeah, due to the fact that the 3DO company designed the hardware and licensed it out, I believe the only model, when the 3DO platform launched, Panasonic was the only company that had a 3DO unit ready to go. Because the hardware, they kept redesigning the hardware and changing the specs almost like up to launch window, which is kind of a problem with a lot of these consoles, is that same sort of thing happened with the Jaguar a little bit, is that it just launched, it was redesigning itself almost up to launch, and so no one really had a game ready. And the Jaguar, sure, it launched with two games, and they both kind of sucked a little bit. I mean, I loved them. The 3DO only launched with one, and it was like all right. It was kind of good, Crash and Burn. It's not like a game you'd want to pay for, really. It's not bad. It's got a very strong element of fun to it. As a freebie, it's all right though. Like, I wouldn't complain. But just the fact that there was only one game ready to go at launch and only one model, they're all vaguely. They all do the same things. They just look a bit different. They have a different form factor. Panasonic's definitely the most common one because it was the launch one, and it was the one that ended up being most popular in Japan. Which is most 3DOs out there are probably going to be the Japanese ones because they did sell better over there. So more of them out in the wild, even over on our side of the world, I think. But yeah, the 3DO just it wasn't going to work. I love it though because I think of all the consoles from that era, of all the ones that tried to be the big dog of the industry. I mean, PS1 did that because Sony waited so long. They had their hardware down, they had it finalized, and they had games ready at launch. And they picked the perfect time, with Nintendo being gone, no one else being the top dog, Sega kind of fumbling. They had like the perfect opportunity where it was like, right there, we'll put the PS1 out there. It was the perfect time. It was a good price. There's so many good reasons why the PS1 came to dominate everything, and as much as I despise that fact of life, they did play pretty well. And I mention this because I feel like, maybe not on a business level, but on a level at least of games, the 3DO is, of all the quote-unquote failure, who cares? Of all the apparently quote-unquote failure consoles of that era, The 3DO, I think, is the one that got the closest to being that PS1, to actually getting it right. Because its 3D is impressive. I mean, like, there's a lot of 3D that the 3DO can render at once, funnily enough. It's all textured as well. Like, for a pre PS1 3D heavy machine, it absolutely is the best one in terms of just what it's capable of doing, you know. The name 3DO I just love as well. I think the plan was to almost make like, kind of like the CDI. It was kind of doing what the CDI did, where it wanted to not so much be just one console, it more wanted to be a format. Because it, similar to the CDI, ran video CDs, so it was trying to conquer the sort of home entertainment market a little bit. And there's even plans for, if it did well enough, to almost try and make the M2, the sequel, the follow-up console, almost to try and make the expanded 3DO more like a PC. So they were thinking ahead of the future. They had the right idea, 3DO. It was just the business end was kind of screwy. The business end was screwy. The launch didn't really set it up to have people making games for it. But in terms of actual games, hardware, controllers, in terms of quality, the 3DO honestly is really good. Like, in an alternate world, it could have been the PS1. It could have done what the PS1 did, and I think it's a really interesting system because of that. I love the 3DO. I think it's awesome. This is like the worst. It's like the worst Monster variant I've had. I don't drink Monster often. I needed the energy. I needed the energy, and because it's morning, this is my breakfast Monster. I don't usually like to have Monster at any time of the day, let alone for breakfast. But I just kind of didn't really have a choice. It is it's an Ultra Fantasy Ruby Red. It's kind of sandy. It just tastes like Ribena, like really boring fruit juice. Can you focus, camera? Fuck it, never mind. It sucks. Monster, step up your fucking game. This is shite. This is awful. It's boring. Oh yeah, the M2. Because the 3DO, people always claim it was a failure, right? People always talk about the 3DO like it didn't do anything. But it sold, like, worldwide a decent 2-3 million, I want to say. Maybe I'm getting that wrong, but it wasn't like a complete failure. Nowhere near as bad as a Jaguar or a CDI. Like, it shifted units. There was interest, you know. There was a fan base for 3DO, and it was a bit bigger than people usually paint it to be. It was successful enough. I mean, they were planning a second console, the M2, right? It's so cool looking. There's like screenshots of the console. There's like demos, like D2. I fucking love D, and D2 I adore. I so want to see just the cutscenes, or just whatever was made of D2 and M2. Weird combo of words there. I want to see that original build of D2 so badly, because I fucking love Warp. That'd be so awesome to see. It looked an interesting piece of hardware. The M2 looked like sort of weaker than Dreamcast, but not quite N64. Kind of like, there was like a line of Namco or Konami arcade games around that time that sort of had a power level that was visually similar to like an N64 Dreamcast between. And it would have been awesome. The more weird consoles you have, the better, right? So it would have been very awesome if the M2 actually became a thing. But all the prototype footage of games for it is interesting. It's fascinating, the M2. And there was plans, like Doom on 3DO. They assumed that when the M2 came out, they could just put Doom on M2, and with the extra power, it would run a bit better, you know. It'd run at like maybe 20 frames or something that wasn't like the, I don't know, like 8 frames a second. What was Doom on 3DO running like? So M2 plans were kicking around for a while, since around the time Doom launched on 3DO, which I want to say was like in '95. I'm gonna guess most 3DO games seem to have come out in '95. I don't know if there was like a drought in like the first 2 years, but most 3DO games I've played seem to say '95 for some reason. So like right before PS1 kind of thing, yeah. So yeah, the M2, it was almost a thing. So you can't really say the 3DO was a failure. It sold about, I think, the sales were equivalent to that of the Mega CD, the Sega CD. And that thing, again, that thing is not a failure. That thing did pretty good. It turned a profit. And so the 3DO, I assume, also turned a profit. It just wasn't enough to keep going. And I don't think the hardware manufacturers maybe felt it was worth it as well. I'm not sure, to be honest. I'm not a businessman. Do I look like I know what the fuck I'm talking about? Business shit. I'm telling you about the 3DO while I get lost on a fucking beach. Bro, I don't know what I'm talking about. My arm is getting really tired from holding up my phone. I'm gonna have to switch arms, I think. Ah. I think there might have been plans. Excuse me. All right, I'm gonna start returning now to land, to human civilization. I think it's been long enough out here. I think there were plans for the M2, or at least the 3DO itself, to be kind of used for internet browsing eventually. I'm not sure. But they were definitely trying to take it in the direction of a PC. Like video player, CD player, DVD player type shit, game console, home entertainment system. You know, they saw the future 3DO. It's just a shame that they just, I guess just the timing wasn't quite there, and the business was a bit of a risk. A lot of mismanagement. It's quite hard for one centralized company to keep track of an entire console's publishing. I'm pretty sure is what they did. Or at least they had to license out other publishers. I actually don't know too much about how the publishing worked. But it was very, very confusing, I'm sure. And I'm sure there was lots and lots of very heated correspondence that went nowhere. In other words, it was probably really fucking hard to manage. But still, you've got to respect the hustle at least. It is just also funny that the 3DO just pretty much exists because one guy just wanted his job to be cheaper and easier. And I guess it backfired, but I think it was worth it. I'm very glad. I think, I don't usually say this, but I think this is a win for capitalism. At least artistically speaking. Because 3DO games have a very special vibe. It's like pre-PS1 3D at its best. I think 3DO games have a real interesting look, honestly. All the FMV games, there's a lot of FMV games on 3DO, yeah. Its FMV game capabilities are pretty good though, to be fair. Probably a lot better than everything else that came out before PS1. I wouldn't even be surprised if it could render videos more than the PS1, because the PS1 didn't have video CD capability, from what I'm aware, at all. They didn't even release like an expansion that allowed you to play video CDs like the Saturn did. So I'm assuming in terms of like, I'm gonna put my hat on. I need a hat. I'm fucking. My ears are getting really cold. I'm gonna put you in my pocket. A new video file has started for some reason. I'm gonna hope it carries on while I fuck around with my pockets and shit. How do I look? I look awful. I look so homeless, bro. Oh, okay, it's fine. It's fine. I don't give a shit. Yeah, the 3DO, I think just more what I love about it is that it was kind of like a little bit of a safe haven, a space for sort of smaller publishers and indie developers, smaller studios. I really like that about the 3DO. It absolutely was just built to benefit the publishers, but it also benefited the developers a lot as well. And I think we need more of that in the industry, especially nowadays, you know. I don't own any 3DO physical games, but despite just being discs that came in jewel cases, they also had really fucking huge boxes. They're like really tall and really awkward to fit on most shelves apparently, which I just think is funny. I might buy a box 3DO game one day just to have a look at it, you know, but it's one of these consoles that you can just burn games for and play, nothing else required. So it's a very good system for poor people nowadays. There's piracy. We need to buy no games for that thing. But also the 3DO, like, it's not too expensive actually. It's about kicking around in the price of, if not actually a bit cheaper than a Neo Geo CD. Yeah, if you buy one from Japan, I spent like £130 on my 3DO, and it came with 2 controllers, and that was from Japan. And I've seen 3DOs even within the country selling for 150 to 200. I bet you could get one on auction for 100 quid if you're lucky. Maybe a bit less, honestly. They're out there. They're not that terribly rare 3DOs. A lot more common than you'd expect is the thing. Just not out in the wild. You've still got to like hunt them down online is the thing. But if you're interested in them, I definitely recommend it. I love the hardware, I love the controller, I love the games, I love the story. It's fascinating. I wish there was more weird business experiments like that. And of all the old early 3D CD consoles that fucked up and people hate and people claimed were a failure, I think the 3DO is probably the best one. It's not my favorite. I'm a Jaguar guy, but I think the 3DO is the best one. And I encourage you, if it interests you, it's a cool hardware, it's a cool space, it's got a very cool vibe, very PC, a little bit of PS1, very vaporwave. Very vaporwave, yeah. It's cool shit. I have nothing else to say. The name 3DO is kind of meant to be like the word audio or video. They were trying to make it like a big like hardware platform like that, which I just love the logo. The logo, the cool CD player with its swervy logo color shit, the audio CD player built into the 3DO. It's cool shit. The weirds and like it doesn't have a BIOS, at least like my model doesn't. It just has this cool, slightly trippy, like space screensaver, a bunch of meteors and planets, all sorts of weird space around some shit. It's very cool. That's it. That's kind of it. I can't think of anything else. And I see people ahead of me, so I'm gonna stop being a sad nerd. Thanks for watching. I'm very cold. I appreciate the watch. I appreciate you being here. Thank you for letting me talk about the 3DO. Thank you for listening. If you have any 3DO games you love, recommendations, I would love to hear. I'm still binging through a lot of them. So please let me know if you have any 3DO recommendations. I'll leave you to it, I guess. Cheers to capitalism and bad business. I'll see you next time.